Jackson in the key. Kick out. Davenport.
A steal for Kentucky. Ahead to Reeves. Left wing three. Got it. Jackson weaves.
A dunk. Bounces off the 80 and he slams it home.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Student Section. This is a show all about college basketball, all about SEC men's college basketball. So today I'm finally doing the video I've promised for like the last couple of weeks now. I'm finally redoing my power rankings. Now that we are 1 week officially into SEC play. Every team has played 2 games. So I feel like I'm able to more properly judge and separate these teams from each other, because before, all these teams had really good records. Pretty much every team was 10-2, some were 9-3, some were 11-1, some were 12-0. But now that we've finally gotten into conference play, everyone's played each other. Every single team has had a loss now, so we've kind of seen how every team looks whenever they lose, how every team looks whenever they win. But with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and okay. This is another week where I don't know if I have the top 5. If I do, I'm going to play it right now. There won't be any audio though, because like I said, I'm just disorganized and I completely forgot to get my clips. But I know for a fact I have 3 of them. I just don't remember what the 3 were. But we'll go ahead and play that right now. Okay, now that is over, hopefully, I think I'm good to move into the power rankings. I do have an idea, though. I think I might, just depending on how, this goes, I might upload on Mondays and maybe upload on Thursdays instead. I want to upload twice a week because I previewed all of last week's games, and I feel like those games from last Saturday, by the time this video comes out on Friday, they're a week away. They happened a week ago. They're not going to be relevant anymore. So I think I might upload a shorter video on Monday, just recapping the games, while this video on either Thursday or Friday is still gonna be the main video of the week, where I preview the next games. I'm gonna have a little segment. This week's segment is the power rankings. I'm just thinking of doing something like that. That way, the video I upload on Monday is just a short, just recapping the games that happened on Saturday. And that way, on this episode, I can recap games from Tuesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, and then preview next week's games and whatever else. We'll see, though. I might not do it every week, but I'm definitely going to upload on, I guess I'll probably just keep it at Friday. I think I'll upload on Friday every day, or every week, and I might just, depending on how I feel, I'll upload a second episode as well. But with that being said, I think that's everything I wanted to get out of the way. So moving straight into the power rankings. As you can see right here, this bottom team, number 16, is going to be South Carolina. They're winless right now in conference play. If I can pull up the teams that they've lost to so far, and not to mention they're 10-5. They were already, I guess they were 10-3 coming into this. They lose really badly. They lose by 35 points to Mississippi State, and then they lose by 20 points to Alabama. Both teams, I'll give them this. Both teams are really good teams. I'll give them that. But it's just this South Carolina team, they're just constantly lacking offense right now. Like I say every time, right now it just kind of looks like Jamari Thomas out there playing, and he's only 6 foot, so there's only so much he can do at that guard position. And then you're getting Colin Murray-Boyles, who's doing whatever he is, which is pretty good. Nick Pringle's been pretty good for this team as well, but a guy like Jacoby Wright, I would like to see more points out of him. Who else on this team that I think would be better than what they are? Jordan Butler. Was he... Hold on, where is he from? I recognize that name. Jordan Butler. Why do I recognize his name? Where did he play at? He played at Missouri. That's why I recognize that name. I kind of expected more of a sophomore jump. I mean, he's nothing crazy. I don't know what his high school ranking is. Looks like he was 96th in the top 100 ranking. What does that put him at, a 4-star? I don't know. I think that puts him at a 4-star. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. It doesn't say. It doesn't matter. But I mean, with him being a 4 or at least a high 3-star, I expected more of a sophomore jump out of him so far. Their freshman Cam Scott is kind of just doing what I expected out of him. He's 38th in his class, so I guess really he should be doing better. He looked like a really good prospect. I forgot about him. That's crazy. He was 38th in his class. That's insane. Anyways, it just feels like nothing's really clicking for this team offensively, defensively. I mean, they have a good scheme. I say this every time, but it just doesn't feel like the execution is quite there. They're lacking just production from guys that you kind of would expect that to come out of. You look at Miles Stute, a guy from Gonzaga. You expected more out of these guys. It's just not really getting it. But, it just... What else is there to say? That's kind of it with this team. They just lack pretty much everything. Good coaching, good scheme. Their odds right now to win the championship are at plus 20,000. So there's that. I guess that's a crazy number, but I mean it makes sense. I don't think they're gonna have really much of a chance. But with that, that's the 16th seed. Not much to say there. Moving on to the 15th seed, we have LSU, Louisiana State University. What was I going to say about this team? Okay. Offensively, the production is there with Cam Carter, Jordan Sears, Victorious Miller. His production has dropped off a little bit, but offensively, the production is there. Whenever you have a guy like Damian Collins, who was the 12th ranked guy in his class 2021, he is, what does that make him? He's a true senior, I believe. A 6'9" forward out of, I guess that's Texas. Atlanta, Texas. I almost said Atlanta, Georgia, but that's Atlanta, Texas. With him being a senior and so high ranked in his class, you'd want more production out of him. I mean, he's giving you decent production, but it's not, 5-star production that he was coming out of high school. Corey Chest is another guy you kind of want more production out of. But I mean, he's only a freshman, so I guess he's giving you pretty good production. It's not showing me what his ranking was, so I guess he wasn't in the top 100 coming out of high school. But yeah, just the offense is there, the defense is not. If I look at their offensive stats, I believe their offensive rating... Who am I looking at? LSU, I guess it's really not. I thought they were doing better offensively. Like, it looks better offensively, but I guess it's just not there. They have one of the worst offenses right now. Well, I guess 10th in terms of points per game, they're 10th in the league. But offensive rating, they're 13th. Their defense, okay, I guess I was wrong. Their defense is where they're getting it at. Fourth in... No, never mind. That's this stat always messes me up. They're allowing the 4th most points in the league, only behind Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Alabama. Which makes their defensive rating, I mean, they have the 8th like they're right in the middle of the league in terms of defensive rating, and then their net rating puts them pretty low, 14th as well. It's like this team just kind of struggles to separate themselves from good teams, like in terms of like in the game. If they're playing a good team, they don't get that much separation. Let's see, what's their biggest win against a decent team? I mean, they lost to Southern Methodist. I don't even remember that game. That's crazy. 64-74. They lost to Pitt. That was a 11-point game. They lost to Pitt. Who's a good team that they beat? UCF. That was a good win, but I mean they only won by 7-point win there. Northwestern State they beat. Kansas State. That's a good win as well. But I mean Kansas State hasn't been as good as we thought they'd be this season either. It's an 11-point win over Kansas State. And that's kind of it for LSU. I guess I was wrong on my first analysis. They're getting offensive production, but it's not like as a team, as a whole unit. You're getting production from Jalen Reed as well, 11 points from him. But just, it's weird. The team looks very stagnant offensively, but they have guys that can get you buckets. It's just offensively as a total unit, it's not really put together properly, in my opinion. And obviously, like I said, the defense was there. If I remember correctly, looking at their steal stats, that's a different team I'm thinking of. LSU's 5th in blocks, whatever. Second in turnovers produced, like their team turning the ball over. So they turn the ball over a lot offensively. That's gonna, that's gonna tank both offensive and defensive numbers because you're gonna give the other team more possessions. You're gonna have less possessions. And then if I look at opponent steals, or I guess they're opponent turnovers. That's what I want to look at. Yeah, they don't really force the other team to turn the ball over either. It looks like. So that's not good either. Just this LSU team, they have a lot more. I don't know. There's something missing, and I think everyone sees it. It's just kind of they just don't look good. Moving on, I'm actually gonna do the next two teams. I'm gonna say they're tied, but I'm gonna have to technically rank one higher, and I'll give my explanation why. But the 14th and 13th seed right now are Texas and Arkansas, which feels kind of crazy considering coming into the season, most people had Arkansas around that 5 to 6 range. I had them 4th into the preseason rankings. Most people had Texas around that 7 or 8 range. Maybe 9 was the lowest I think I saw. And both these teams right now are in the 13th and 14th seed. The reason I have them tied is because these teams are so similar in their current situations right now. You look at both teams, they got a lot of transfer talent that came in. You look at Texas, they got Tremont Mark. I know this was last year, but they got Caden Shedrick last year. Both these teams also have star freshmen. You look at Boogie Fland and then Trey Johnson. And then Arkansas, like I mentioned, with their incoming transfer talent, they got, I mean, obviously you got the Kentucky guys that came over. Adu Thero's been pretty good, but you look at Jonas Adu's been pretty bad. He hasn't given you the production you wanted. John L. Davis hasn't given you the production you wanted. And then Texas, like I mentioned, with Tremont Mark, hasn't given you the production you wanted. You're getting good production out of your freshman, Trey Johnson and Boogie Fland. But both these teams are in the same kind of situation where you don't want your best player to be a freshman. And before you Kentucky fans say anything that, that's all Cal recruits as freshmen, yes. But the goal, like everyone going into the season didn't expect Boogie Fland to be our most impactful player. We kind of expected it to be like John L. Davis, Adu Thero. No, we'll say Jonas Adu and then Adu Thero, and then maybe DJ Wagner and then Boogie Fland. Maybe you can switch those two around. We don't really know. But no one really expected him to be the most productive, the best player on this team. Same thing with Texas. We knew Trey Johnson was good, but you didn't really expect him to have to carry your offensive load. Goes both ways. Both teams are just underachieving. And another thing that they're similar in is they both had pretty tough conference schedules so far. Texas just played Auburn and Texas A&M. Lost to Texas A&M by 20, lost to Auburn by like 8. So that was actually a pretty good game. And then Arkansas lost to Tennessee by 30 almost, and then they lost to Ole Miss by like 20-ish. Maybe, no, it was like 10 points, maybe less than 10. I don't remember exactly, but both teams are in the same boat. I have Texas at 14th and Arkansas at 13th. The only reason I have that, like I said, in my mind they're tied. They're both basically the same team, different jerseys. But the reason I have Arkansas higher is because I do feel like they have more talent. It's just both teams, they've been so injury prone, they haven't really gotten that chemistry together. You watch both teams play, it's just lacking, like there's no consistency, there's no smoothness, there's no chemistry really at all. Texas, you kind of have just Jordan Pope he's just a tough shot taker. He'll make them occasionally, but he's chucking up shots. Trey Johnson efficiently is making shots, but Caden Shedrick is there. Like, he's an offensive weapon that you kind of would expect more production. Not more production, but more of an impact out of. Tremont Mark, like I mentioned, hasn't really given you anything yet. Same can be said with Arkansas. John L. Davis, being the number 1 transfer in this class, has looked atrocious so far. Just like, he's only had like 3 games off the top of my head that I can remember where he scored more than 12 points. You're just not getting anything out of him, considering that he was the ACC Player of the Year last year, averaging like 16 or so points, I think 17 maybe. You're just not getting anything out of him. Same with Tremont Mark, averaged 16 or 17 last year with Arkansas. He's at like 8 or something right now. What is he at? Let me pull up Texas numbers. But just in general, you're just not really getting anything out of these guys you would expect. Tremont Mark is at 8 points per game. That's just not what you want. Both teams just lacking that production. Arkansas and Texas, they do kind of have a little rivalry. It's more in football, not really there in basketball. But, Arkansas and Texas fans, we can put our differences aside, and we have the same team. We can relate to each other. Both teams are underperforming. Okay, moving on to the 12th team is Missouri. Missouri had a really good pre-conference play. They were 12-1. They were one of the top-ranked teams. I think, were they ever ranked at one point? I can't remember if they ever got ranked at one point. I'm trying to look, but it's not showing me. I don't think they ever got ranked, but okay, hold up. Here it is. Missouri was never ranked. No, they were not ranked. But what was I going to say with them? Okay, yeah. So they've had as a team, they've looked really, really well. You look at their they forced the second amount of turnovers in the league. Their steal numbers as a team, they're the number one team in steals, and then they also don't. They're about middle of the pack in terms of turning the ball over, but they put a lot of defensive pressure on that perimeter. If I look at their defensive rating, I believe they have one of the top in the league with Missouri. Yeah, they're the 5th rated defensive rating wise. In terms of allowing offensive points per game, they're a little bit lower. They're actually a lot bit lower. They're 5th in terms of they allow the 5th most points. So they're actually towards the bottom in terms of points per game, but defensive rating is a different story for Missouri. No, it's not. What team was I just looking at? Was I looking at Ole Miss? I don't know. Missouri defensive rating isn't actually that good. In terms of the eye test tells me it is, but looking at these stats, it doesn't really say it is. But they don't turn the ball over. No, they force. I'm all over the place. This is a weird video. They force turnovers. They get steals. They like to run the fast break, and they're getting a pretty balanced offensive attack. You get 14 or 13 from Mark Mitchell, 13 from Tamar Bates, 10 from Anthony Robinson, 10 from Marquez Warwick, getting 8 from Trent Pierce, 11 from Caleb Grill. You're getting 8 from Tony Perkins. So it's a pretty balanced offensive attack. If I remember correctly, Missouri has the 2nd rated offense in the league. In terms of points per game, they're a little bit lower down at 5th, but like I said, rating-wise, they're the 2nd in the league, which puts their net rating probably around the middle. Yeah, they're 7th in the league in net rating. They don't really get many blocks, but if I look at their rebounding numbers, total rebounding, they're not really rebounding either, which I think would probably attribute to their defensive rating being so low. But perimeter defensive-wise, they're definitely there. They like to run. It's a very balanced team. Like I said, it's not like you don't really get the feeling that there's a star player in this team. It's just they work well as a unit, very similar to like a Kentucky team, to like a Mississippi State team, an Oklahoma team. But Oklahoma, you do get more scorers anyways. Moving on to the next team is the 11th seed, which is going to be Vanderbilt. Which, when making this list, I thought I'd have Vanderbilt a little bit higher just because they've been really good. I thought they'd be a lot higher, but then looking at the teams above them, I just couldn't put them over them. The only team I could put them above would be the next team I'm going to talk about, but we'll wait for that. Vanderbilt has been really good. They put they're very similar to Missouri in the way that they put pressure on the perimeter. They like to run. I think they have one of the quickest pace in the league. Yeah, they have the fourth fastest pace in the league. They like to run. They like to run on offense. They like to force turnovers, and they like to run on defense. They force turnovers on defense and then run on offense. If I look at opponent turnover numbers, I think they're also up there when looking at Vanderbilt. Yeah, they're the number 1 team in forcing turnovers. Their steal totals are 2nd in the league, only behind Missouri. So as you can see, statistically, they're very similar to Missouri. Except, yeah, they get that perimeter defense-wise, but their total defense rating, they're the 10th in the league. So they have this defensive rating stat messes me up so much the way that Sports Reference has it. They're one of the top defenses in the league. Definitely top perimeter defense in my mind. You look at their rebounding numbers for Vanderbilt. They're towards the bottom in total rebounds, but offensive rebounding, they're 7th in the league. That's just total numbers, not percentage. I don't have any advanced stats like that. And then you look at opponent points allowed. They're towards the middle. So it's a little different than their defensive rating. But you look at personal points, so like points that they put out, their points per game. They're 6th in the league. You're looking at Vanderbilt. And like I said, pace is pretty high up there. Strength of schedule is still pretty weak. They're the 2nd easiest schedule in the league, which is why they're not any higher. That's the reason I didn't put them any higher. But the eye test, whenever they play games, they look really good. If I look at Vanderbilt teams that they just played, They just took a beat down from Mississippi State. They lost by 12 points. So I guess that's not really a beat down. That's still a pretty close game. But they lost to Mississippi State, which is a ranked team, by only 12 points. And then they beat LSU on their home floor. So they beat LSU at home by 8 points. So, I mean, it's still a relatively close game. I mean, still you have that offensive boost from, or that LSU had an offensive boost from being at home, and they still won. So that's just, they're where they are. I want to see them play some tougher competition. I'm trying to think of who their best win would have been over this year. I can't remember. They beat TCU, is a decent team. TCU did beat Arkansas, which was a preseason game. It doesn't really count towards the schedule, but they still beat Arkansas. They beat Nevada by 2 points. So I would say so. It looks like TCU, maybe Virginia Tech. I think that might be their best win. I don't know. I think it's either TCU or Virginia Tech might be their best win. But I want to see them get a good win over a good SEC team because they beat LSU, which is, in my opinion, the second worst team in the league. They beat Cal. Cal's still not an amazing team, but they're not terrible. And then they lost to Drake. That's a bad loss. That kind of tanks them down. But anyways, that is what seed did I put them at? That is 11th seed. Moving on to the 10th seed, we have Oklahoma. They've looked amazing. They have 2 Player of the Year candidates on my team with Jalen Moore and Jeremiah Fears. The thing is with Oklahoma, they had a bad game against Alabama. I think they lost by 20 points to Alabama, and then they lost to Texas A&M by 2 points. So they are one of the 5 winless teams in SEC play, I think, if I am correct. Let me look at conference win-loss. Yeah, they are one of the 5 teams in SEC play that don't have a win yet. Granted, they have played 2 really good teams in Alabama and Texas A&M, but you'd like to see them get at least one of those wins. I think that Texas A&M game would have been a good win for them. It definitely would have bolstered them over some of these other teams. But also, I still have to take into account pre-conference play because we're only 2 games into conference play. I can't just rank everyone based off of conference games. And Oklahoma, like I said, had a really, really good conference season or pre-conference season. If I look at where they were high in one of those stats. Yeah, they have the number 1 defensive rating right now in the entire league. In terms of opponent. Oh, no. Bro, I'm telling you, this stat tricks me every time I read it. They have the worst defensive rating in the league. Opponent points per game, they're 3rd. They're only in front of Alabama and Kentucky. Points per game. So statistically, this team just doesn't look good. But I think it's just the Jeremiah Fears, the Jalen Moore factor that really helped this team. They're 5th in team steals. They are in total rebounding numbers. They're not really rebounding the ball either. They're the worst team rebounding-wise. Offensive rebounding, they're the 2nd worst team rebounding-wise. Arkansas is up there. I forgot to mention that Arkansas cannot rebound offensively or defensively. We saw that in the Tennessee game. It's kind of late to mention. I will admit I was wrong. I thought Arkansas would be competitive against Tennessee. They were not even close. I just want to admit that real quick before people try and say that I ignored that. I was way off. I thought they'd lose. I still thought they'd lose, but I thought it'd be like a 7-point loss, not a 25-point loss. Anyways, back to Oklahoma. Statistically, they just don't look super competitive. But, they have really big wins pre-conference play-wise. They beat Michigan by 1 point. They also... No, that was Missouri who beat Kansas. They beat Oklahoma State by 15 points. They beat Alcorn State. They beat Georgia Tech in that ACC matchup. They beat them by 15 points. They have a win over Louisville. They have a win over Arizona. They have a win over Providence. So they played some pretty good teams here. Like I said, their pre-conference season was really, really well. But so far into conference play, they beat Seton Hall. Or no, that's Stetson. Sorry, wrong team. Northwestern State in the Lindenwood. But they have some really good wins in pre-conference play. It's just this conference schedule has, maybe we'll see this Oklahoma team fall back to where we kind of expected them to be. I thought they'd be the 2nd worst team in league play. So far, they're not the 2nd worst, but they're towards the bottom half. If they keep playing this way, they're going to keep falling. Maybe we'll see them, go back to earth, stop, playing out of their, not ranking, but out of their, they're not their comfort zone, but no one expected. What I'm saying is I think Oklahoma's going to fall back towards expectations. That's what I'm getting at. Moving on to the next team is Georgia. They are the 9th seed. Georgia's looked really good in conference play. I believe they are. If I look at conference wins and losses, Georgia is 1-1. They're 13-2 on the season. I think they had a little bit of a rough start. They lost to Marquette, and then they just lost to Mississippi. Ole Miss. Yeah, so they just lost to Ole Miss, and then they also just beat Kentucky, who beat. Okay, this is gonna get really weird. Florida beat Tennessee, which is the #1 team in the league. Kentucky beat Florida, which does that mean that Florida's better than Tennessee? Does that mean that Kentucky's better than Florida? And then Georgia beat Kentucky. Does that mean Kentucky's better, or does that mean that Georgia's better than all of them? No, but it's a weird kind of chain of events. So technically, Georgia beat the #1 team in the league, if you ask me. But no, really. Georgia's looked really good as of late. They have a win. Who's there? They had a really good win. I just don't remember who it was. Obviously, that Kentucky win's a really good one. They beat Grand Canyon, not by a lot, but they had a really big win over Notre Dame, who's not the best team as well. Jacksonville, another win there. St. John's, that's a tournament team in my opinion. They beat St. John's. They beat Georgia Tech. They beat North Florida, doesn't count. Texas Southern doesn't really count. They beat Tennessee Tech, doesn't really count either. But as of late, they've looked really good. That double big lineup with Asa Newell and Santos Surreal have looked super dominant. Asa Newell is just continuing to do everything, leading the league in offensive rebounds. What else is he? I know his stats are crazy. I'm talking like this dude is. I think I had Jeremiah Fears originally as my freshman of the year. Right now, Asa Newell is the runaway freshman of the year. It's not even close right now. Like not even close. Looking at his averages this season, he's at 15 points per game. Well, 15.5 points per game. You can round up and say 16. He's at a block per game, a steal per game. He's only at 1 assist, but I mean he's a forward. He's not really going to be on the ball that much. Total rebounding, he's at 7. Offensive rebounding, he averages more offensive rebound than defensive rebounds. Free throw percentage, you like to be a little bit higher, but overall, he's been super good. 2-point percentage efficiency is almost at 7% or 70% at 30% from 3, so a little low on 3-point percentage, but he's looked really, really good. At only 10 shots per game, he's averaging more points than shots. That's always a good thing. Super, super efficient. Obviously, Jeremiah Fears has been one of the best freshmen as well, but I think Asa Newell has definitely topped him so far. But talking about as a team, this Georgia team, so against Kentucky, they just looked just more physical, more dominant, and that's going to come from those two freshman centers that they have. I don't know. I won't really consider Asa Newell a center, but those two freshman big men that they run down the paint. And I've already mentioned how highly I think of Silas Demery. He's just so steady at 12 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. He's one of those guys that is just such a veteran player that he just doesn't make mistakes. And he's only in his second year. He's only a sophomore, and he looks like a veteran. It's insane. His freshman year was pretty good as well, but he only averaged. I guess he's at 2. His turnover numbers are way higher than I always think they are. He doesn't look like he makes a bunch of dumb passes. He runs the offense very well, especially being a sophomore. What are his stats over the last few games? I mean, he averaged his past few games. His turnover numbers haven't been that bad, especially with how much the ball is in his hand. I wish I could pull up his usage rate, but I can't find that anywhere. I mean, I would say he has a pretty high usage rate just based off of watching the game. I feel like Georgia fans would agree with me on that one. But he's been super steady for them. Dakota LaFuse looked pretty good as well. Just going out there and scoring, just doing his job. You have like Blue Canes looked really good, just steady, kind of get what you expect out of him. RJ Godfrey's looked pretty good as well. I think it was Dakota LaFuse was the guy that was like, he's kind of like their iron. He's their energy. He's their hard head guy. He reminds me a lot of like a Matt Barnes. I believe that's Dakota LaFuse. I think that's him. Is there a picture of him? Where do I find a picture of this dude? No, it's not. Who am I thinking of? Is it Tyron Lawrence? No? Okay, I'm tripping. I don't know who I'm talking about. RJ Godfrey, maybe? Nah, I don't know. I really don't know who I'm talking about. Doesn't matter. But yeah, they've looked really good so far, as of late. They're looking good. Moving on to the next team is Mississippi State. I believe they are a ranked team. I don't know what their ranking is right now. Mississippi State, 14th. They just ended up beating. They're one of the few teams that are. Where's Mississippi State? In terms of conference play, They are 2 in conference. No, conference wins. Bro, I'm all over the place. Hold on. Okay, Mississippi State 2-0 in conference play. That's what I thought. They are 14-1 in total. Their only loss coming to Butler. Not the best loss there, but they beat Pittsburgh, which is not the best team, but they beat them by nearly 30 points there. They beat McNeese, I think, almost beat Alabama. McNeese is pretty good. They beat them by 3 points. They beat Memphis, which was ranked at one point. They beat South Carolina, which, and Vanderbilt. So far, their conference play schedule hasn't been the best, but they are a ranked team. I think I might even put Georgia over them just in terms of like schedule differences, like strength of schedule differences, especially with Georgia beating Kentucky the other night. I think I might switch them, but we'll just leave it at this. I made the list. I'm going to leave it at this. Mississippi State, historically, Chris Jan teams have been very physical, very grinded out type teams, but with the absolute resurgence, but I say resurgence, but it's not really a resurgence. It's just kind of growth from Josh Hubbard because he was amazing last year. He was in talks of freshman of the year. Looked super good this year. Let me pull up these stats real quick. Okay, so Mississippi State. Josh Hubbard is at 17 points per game, and then it's quite a bit of a big fall off. You go to 11 points per game from Claudell Harris. Keyshawn Murphy, he's giving you 10 points per game. You're getting 10 from Riley Kugel. You're getting 9 from RJ Melendez. And then Cam Matthews, we all know that's my guy, giving you 8, 7, and 4. You're getting 7 rebounds as well from Keyshawn Murphy. He's looked really good, junior forward. Does not show me his rankings, but he came from... Oh, he hasn't transferred at all. He's been on this team. I don't know how I didn't know that. But this is one of those teams that I like the way that this team and Texas A&M, I'm going to talk about them later, but they don't really, they have such good, what's the word I'm thinking of? Continuity. Like, they don't really have much turnover with these teams. Like, you look at guys, I believe they added Riley Kugel. I believe he was a transfer in, right? Or I'm wrong or right? No, yeah, he came in from Florida because I know I recognize the name. I just can't remember where. RJ Melendez is also a transfer in. So their transfers have been giving them good production. If I look at some of their stats that they have as a team, obviously right now they're leading the league in win percentage. I think. Well, no, they're tied up with Auburn. They're tied up with Florida. So they're one of the few teams that are 14-1. There's only 3 teams in the league, and they're up there with Florida and Auburn. Granted, their schedule has been a little bit easier than some other teams, but, I mean, you can't ignore that. Mississippi State is second in the league in total steals. I don't know about opponent turnovers. Like, I don't know if they're forcing their opponents to turn the ball over. Yeah, they are. They're one of those teams up there as well. The next team I'm going to talk about is also up there, but they're one of those teams that like to play fast pace. If I look at their pace for Mississippi State, okay, they're not really, because their half-court sets are going to be a lot more slow, grinded out. But in terms of running and transition off of those steals that they force, they're going to be a faster-paced team in that aspect. But their half-court sets are still going to be more slowly grinded out, get an open shot. If I look at their total field goals attempted, they're 4th. What about 2-point? Where's that at? One's not on here. They don't really shoot the 3. I mean, they shoot the 3 at a decent high clip. They're towards the top half of the league, but they're still towards the bottom of that top half, if that makes sense. Percentage-wise, they're towards the bottom half, so they're not making them super efficiently. Effective field goal percentage are towards the bottom of the league as well, so not really an efficient team. But they still, this Chris Jane's team, they're better than normal, is kind of what I'm getting at. Block numbers are towards the bottom. They don't really turn the ball over that much either. They're towards the bottom in total turnovers. They foul it kind of high. But, there's not much else to say about this team. Just the fact that they're better offensively than normal. Moving on to the next team is Ole Miss. This is another team that actually really similar to Mississippi State, and really similar to where is it? Similar to Georgia. They're very team oriented, but they have a good system. They like to run a motion offense where they get a lot of different looks. They run a lot of different sets, a lot of different types of screens. They love screening. But with Ole Miss, they're one of the best teams in the whole country at forcing turnovers and not turning the ball over. If you look at their turnover totals, they are the lowest team in the SEC. They're one of the lowest teams in the entire country in turnover totals. If I look at their opponent turnovers, they are the third team in the league in opponent turnovers. That's forcing turnovers on the other team. Steal numbers, they're the fourth in the league in steal turnovers. So they're one of those teams that's going to have that perimeter pressure. Their paint pressure isn't, or their paint defense isn't the greatest. If I look at their block totals, they are Ole Miss. I mean, they're towards the middle of the league in block totals, so they're going to have, the paint pressure's there, but it's not as much as you. If they had a better paint pressure, basically what I'm saying is that they'd be a better team, defensive team. There's just, if I look at opponent field goal percentage, I believe, where are they with this? Ole Miss. They're towards the middle in field goal percentage. 3-point percentage with Ole Miss, they are this opponent 3-point percentage towards the middle as well. I think that Arkansas game helped them out because last time I checked, they were closer to the bottom, I believe. Free throws attempted, they don't. If it'll load, sorry, it's not loading right now. They do not really put the team at the free throw line. No, they do. They foul teams a lot. Sorry, these stats are all weird right now. They foul teams a lot. They're averaging their opponent free throw numbers is at 20 right now. Free throws attempted as a team, they're towards the middle of the league at 21. But they're a very uniform team. They have a really good system. They don't turn the ball over, and they're going to put you a lot of defensive pressure. They're going to get in the passing lanes. They're going to put on-ball pressure on you. They're going to get steals as well. But if I look at some of their wins in terms of why I have them where I have them, where are we at? Ole Miss. Where's Ole Miss? Okay. They're also another team that's 2-0 in conference play. They have beat Georgia, and then they beat Arkansas, which they're both middle-of-the-pack teams, but they still beat both of them pretty convincingly. They beat Georgia, looks like, by 12 points. They beat Arkansas by, how much is that? That's 7 points. So they beat both teams by, 7 and 12. Anyways, their worst loss looks like they got a beat down by Memphis. They got beat by 17. But other than that, they've had really good games. They've only lost 2 games in total. What are some of their marquee wins that they have? They beat Louisville, which it feels like every team's beat Louisville except for Kentucky. They beat BYU pretty convincingly. They beat Oral Roberts pretty convincingly. They beat Colorado State pretty convincingly. They beat South Alabama. Yeah, so I mean they have some pretty convincing wins just throughout the entirety of their season. I don't expect them to keep this spot in conference play. I think they would fall, but I don't know. The way they're playing right now is, who knows? But next team is the 6th seed. We have Texas A&M. They're one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the entire league. They're very physical. Right now, Wade Taylor is only at 16 points per game. I would expect that to kind of, I guess, stay the same. He's one of those guys that everybody loves. He's been with his team all 4 of his years. One of the best scorers in the entire league, talking about SEC. Zurich Phelps has looked really good as well. The senior out of Texas as well. So this team has a lot of Texas guys, and this is also, like I mentioned, this is another team that doesn't have much turnover. They did get Zurich Phelps out of the transfer portal. That's right. I remember seeing his name. Henry Coleman's been there. Pharrell Payne has been there. I think so, right? Yeah. No, he came from Minnesota. I don't know why he thought he's been here. I guess he just looks like an A&M guy. He's like, so Henry Coleman and Pharrell Payne look like the only guys on this team out of state. You have Solomon Washington, but he's from Louisiana. You have a guy from Anderson Garcia from the Dominican Republic, but I mean he went to high school in Tennessee, it looks like. Anyways, that doesn't even matter. But basically, this team has a lot of just continuity. There's not much roster turnover. I think they had one of the smallest amount of transfer numbers. You have Hayden Hefner there from last year, Solomon Washington from last year. Was Obaseki there from last year as well? I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's been there all 4 years. It's a very old team, a very mature veteran team. If you look at their top scorers, it's senior, junior, junior, senior, and then your first freshman is Chris McDermott, which that is a scary thing if you're a Texas A&M team fan. You're losing most of your team next year. How do they recover? But this is a team that's been playing with each other. A lot of these guys have been here all 4 years. They know the system, they know the coach, they know their teammates. They're a very high floor team, but not the highest ceiling team, just because they kind of lack that, the scoring punch. They have Wade Taylor and Zurich Phelps, and after that, it kind of falls off. scoring wise. But defensively, they're going to lock you up. They're very physical. They're going to rebound on both ends, but especially that offensive end. Offensive rebounding total, they're at 16, just right above Florida, who's a very close team to them. Alabama's also up there. Total rebounding numbers, they're third in the league, right behind Alabama and Florida. But it's just another one of those system teams that know each other. Just very consistent day in and day out. If I look at some of their games, did I already go over their games? They had a pretty bad loss to Oregon, and then they lost their first game to UCF. I remember that. It was still a close game. Because I remember I came in saying Texas A&M was going to be one of the better teams in the league. I think I had them at maybe second. And then they had that big loss, and I was like, that is really bad timing. But they just beat Oklahoma by 2. They mopped the floor with Texas. They beat them by 20. What are some other... They beat Purdue, which is the team that beat Alabama. They beat Purdue by 4 points. They beat Texas Tech. They beat Wake Forest is another good, decent team. They beat Rutgers, which hasn't been very good so far. They beat Creighton. They honestly had a pretty tough schedule. If I look at the strength of schedule for Texas A&M, they're the 4th hardest schedule in the league. They don't really play with pace. They're one of the slowest teams in the league. But once again, like I said, they're just one of those tough defensive teams. They run a grinded out offense with their type of system that they run. They're very similar to an Ole Miss, to a Mississippi State team. A lot of these teams in the middle of the conference, they play very similarly in terms of system teams, older veteran teams. They don't really have much of a high ceiling, but they have a steady floor. They're teams that have a high floor, medium ceiling, I guess you could say. And what I mean by that is a floor means you know they're going to be at least this bad, and the ceiling is they have potential to be this good, if that makes any sense. So usually defensive teams are going to be floor teams. Offensive teams are going to be ceiling teams, if that makes any sense. I'm going to reference that as we get into these higher seeds. Moving on to the 5th seed, we have Kentucky. Very high-powered offense. If I look at their offensive rating for Kentucky, 4th offensive rating, I believe they're 2nd in points per game, only behind Alabama, which is another one of those teams that's just going to just shoot you out the building. Defensive-wise, they are the 3rd worst defensive rating. In opponent points, they are the 2nd worst. So very similar to Alabama, except Alabama has more star power. I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about Alabama here in a second. But the thing with Kentucky is that it's really weird. They can go out and beat a team like Duke. They can go out and beat a team I know they had another really good win this year, but they can go out and beat a team like Duke. They can beat a team like Georgia State. Oh, I guess Georgia State's not really. They had a Western Kentucky. They beat Jackson State, Lipscomb. I mean, they had a pretty easy schedule, but they beat a team like Duke. They beat a team like Gonzaga. They beat a team like Colgate. They beat a team like Louisville. I thought they lost to Louisville for some reason. I guess I was wrong. They lost to Clemson. That's who it was. So then they go out and lose to a team like Clemson. They get absolutely washed by Ohio State. They get washed by Georgia. But then they beat a team like Florida. This team is so weird because they can go in a 6-minute stretch where they look like the best team in the league. Offense is running. They're hitting every shot. They're forcing turnovers on defense. And then they go through a 12-minute stretch where their offense is stagnant. They can't get a shot off. They're not making anything. They're getting scored on. They're getting punished in the paint. They can't switch on defense. Really, really weird, polarizing team. But you can't argue with the wins that they have over, like I said, teams like Colgate. Teams like, they beat Brown. But I mean, Brown's not like a really good team. But they beat Florida, which in my opinion, we'll talk about Florida here in a second. They have really big wins. It's just those losses. It's weird. They beat good teams and they lose to bad teams. I don't know what it is with this team. Very polarizing team. I think with pace of play, they're towards the top as well with Alabama. This Kentucky team is just a very high-powered offense. This is one of those, excuse me, night in and night out, this is one of those teams that's going to have a very high ceiling and a very low floor. Because if they're making their shots, their system is going to get them open shots. If they're making them, high ceiling. If they're missing them, low floor. Because their defense isn't going to, they're not very physical. They're not very, defensively, powerful. Like I said, defensive rating, they have the 3rd worst defense in the league in terms of defensive rating. Opponent points per game, I already mentioned 2nd in opponent points per game. Total rebounding numbers for Kentucky, they're actually 4th, so they do rebound, but a lot of that comes from just long rebounds, I guess. They force, if I look at opponent 3-point attempts, let me check. Opponent 3-point attempts, I guess they do a good job at running teams. No. They're the 2nd team in allowing they're the 2nd in the league at allowing the other team to shoot threes. They let the other team shoot. Basically, I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this. They run a very high-paced offense. They shoot a lot of threes, and they don't really get to the paint. But on the defensive end, they let the other team shoot the ball. They let the other team get in the paint. They let the other team punk them around in the paint. They let them out-physical them night in and night out. The only game that they really out-physicaled the other team was against Duke. But they're third in the league in three-points attempted. I believe they're towards the top in three-point percentage as well, fifth in the league in percentage-wise. But that's that Kentucky team, very polarizing. I debated putting them below Texas A&M, but their wins speak for themselves. Moving on to the fourth team is Tennessee. They had a big fall off. I think part of that is just the fact that they got beat so badly by Georgia. Who beat them? It was Florida, right? Florida beat them pretty badly. Like they only scored 15 points in the first half. That's the type of badly I'm talking about. I think they ended that game with 40 points. How am I opening Vanderbilt stats? I want to look at Tennessee. Tennessee, very good defensive team. They're still the number one defensive team in the league by a pretty good margin, defensive rating-wise and opponent points-wise. They're miles ahead of everybody else. They force turnovers. They rebound offensively. If I pull them up again with offensive or defensive opponent turnovers, oh my gosh, I cannot talk today. They're towards the top of the league in forcing turnovers. Rebounding wise, they're going to get a lot of rebounds. Throughout this entire season, they've only really had one close game, and that was against Illinois. They won by 2 points. But if you look at their point spread, they beat teams by a lot. They beat Arkansas by like 22 points. What are some other big ones they had? They beat Miami, which is not really a good team. They beat them pretty good. Beat Syracuse pretty good. They beat Baylor pretty good. They beat Virginia pretty good. But then they go out and lose that badly to Florida. And this was a bad loss for Tennessee. I don't know what was going on. They couldn't stop Florida, and they couldn't get a bucket on the offensive end. I think it did really highlight their weaknesses. Very similar to last year. If Dalton Knecht or Chaz Lanier isn't giving you the production you want, which actually I think. Hold on. Let me look at this real quick before I talk. Where is that game at? Okay, here's the game. Tennessee versus Florida. You get. Where is Chaz Lanier? Okay, points here. Where are the points at? Okay, so you only get 10 from Chaz Lanier. You only get 10 from Zakai Ziegler, and you don't really get much from anybody else. They get 0 from Cade Phillips, 0 from Darlington DeBar, 0 from Bishop Boswell, 0 from Jemai Meshack, which he's not really out there to score, but he's definitely out. You want some production out of him. Igor Milicic gives you 8. Felix Okapara gives you 8. Basically, what I was going at is every year with Rick Barnes, this team is going to be a good defensive team. But if you don't get that production out of your top guys offensively, you're not really going to get it from anybody else. We saw that last year. If Dalton Knecht isn't scoring, they're not scoring as a team. And even nights where Dalton Knecht did still score, he was tugging that offensive load. Same thing with Chaz Lanier this year. It's just a big burden to put on these guys' back. So if they have one off game, they don't really win the game. And they look terrible if they don't get that offensive production out of them. If I pull up, I want to pull up their loss against, I guess their close game against Illinois. I want to see what those numbers look like. You're getting 17 points from Chaz Lanier, so it's not like a crazy game. But you look at the rest of the box score. Jordan Gainey really carried you that game, but you only get 5 from. You only get 5 points here, 2 points here, 0 points there, 6, 7, 6, 0. Basically, what I'm saying is what I've already said. Their defense is amazing, but they just lack that offensive production from the other guys. Chaz Lanier is leading the league in points per game at 19.6, and total points as well. He just passed Trey Johnson. But, very similar to a Dalton Knecht type role. Not much else to say about that team. Moving on to the third overall team is going to be Alabama. They are one of the undefeated teams in conference play right now. I believe, undefeated. They've looked really good. It's just a Nate Oates team, very efficient offense. They run a really good scheme. They get shots up quick. If I look at their total field goals attempted, they should be towards the top. Yep, second in field goals attempted. They're going to shoot a lot of shots. Their physicality is definitely lacking. They're the worst defensive team in the league. In opponent points, and then defensive rating, they're also right behind. They're the second worst. If I look at net rating, they're towards the top with net rating, just because of Wait, no, hold on. Why is it sorted like that with net rating? they're towards the top in net rating because their offense is going to carry them. But defensive-wise, they're not really forcing that many turnovers. They're not getting that many steals. They're not really getting too many blocks either. It's very similar to Kentucky. They're going to go out there, and obviously they're looking a lot better now. They're getting oh my gosh, what is his name? This is bad. This is really bad, bro. Mark Sears, that is really bad. His production's getting up. He's back at the usual 18.5 points per game. 3 rebounds and almost 5 assists. Grant Nelson's giving you production. You're getting production from LeBaron Filan and Aiden Holloway. But after that, the production drops off pretty badly. Latrell Wrightsell's giving you production as well. But they have nights where they don't shoot the ball very efficiently, and they're not really just putting any pressure defensively. That's a normal Nate Oates team. But like I said, their offense is so high-powered, they can go out and outscore really anybody. Their depth is they have so much depth on this team. Like I just mentioned, Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, LeBaron Filan, Aiden Holloway, Clifford, not really going to go out there and score that much. Latrell Wrightsell, they have so many guys that they can rely on to put up production. Chris Youngblood's a good guy off the bench. Darian Reed has looked pretty good off the bench as well, a freshman. They have so much offensive firepower, it's kind of hard to outscore them. But if you manage to slow it down even a little bit, you're going to win. If I look at some of their losses, I know for a fact they lost to – who was that loss? They lost to Oregon, and they also lost to Purdue early in the season. They had some close games with Houston and then Rutgers, which hasn't been a very good team so far. They had a close game with North Dakota, close game against Creighton. They have a lot of close games, and that's because McNeese is another close game. I really thought they were going to lose that one. And then they had a close game against Arkansas State. They don't really have many big victories, and a lot of these close games are against just not very good teams, to be honest. But as of late, they've looked really good. They have a big win over Kent State, South Dakota State, not very good teams, but they have a huge win over Oklahoma and a huge win over South Carolina, which aren't the best teams. But I don't know. Maybe I changed their ranking. I don't think they're going to stay this high. They just haven't looked amazing yet, but it's Alabama. I don't know. Offense is good, defense isn't. That's that. Florida, very similar story. Very high-powered offense, but the difference with them is that they rebound. That's the second seed, if I didn't mention that. Got the big win over Tennessee. Obviously, they lost to Kentucky, but that was one of those games. I think anybody would have lost Kentucky that game. They were making every shot. I mean, it was 100 to 106, and Florida played really good. You have a Player of the Year candidate in Walter Clayton, and that was their only loss, which was a really close game, like I mentioned, to Kentucky. They beat Tennessee by, I already went over that game. They beat Tennessee. What other tough games do they have? They beat UNC. They beat Arizona State. They beat Virginia. And all these teams, I mean, they are beating these teams. They beat Wichita State. Who else did they beat? They beat Wake Forest. They beat... I'm trying to find some other... They beat Florida State. I'm talking like these games are like 20, 15-point games. They beat Jacksonville, and then they beat South Florida, which aren't the best teams, but they have a lot of really, really good wins. This offense looks unstoppable, if I'm being honest. You're getting 17 out of Walter Clayton. You're getting 16 out of Elijah Martin. He's playing both sides of the floor, too. 13 out of Will Richard. You're getting 10 out of Alex Condone. Like I said, they're leading the league in rebounding numbers. At total rebounding, they are 45. They're second in offensive rebounding. They move the ball really well. They're 6th in the league in turnover or in assist. The only thing that they really lack is just that perimeter defense. But like I said, they have Elijah Martin. They can put him on a guy to stop someone. Walter Clayton isn't going to give you that defensive production, but you don't really expect it out of him either. Will Richards giving you that production as well. Just overall, a really just super efficient team. If I look at their numbers, they are in total field goal percentage. I guess they're towards the bottom of the league. 3-point percentage, they're towards the middle, but they put up a lot of shots. If you look at 3 points attempted, they're second in the league. Field goals attempted, they're first in the league. They're going to shoot a lot. If you talk about pace, they're third team in terms of pace, only behind Kentucky and Alabama. But very similar to both of those teams, except they're a better rebounding team. They're more physical in the paint. That's why I give them the nod over teams like in Tennessee. Well, I guess they're not more. They have a way better offense in Tennessee, but their defense makes up for it. They have a better defense than Alabama, better defense than Kentucky. I think their defensive rating is second defensive rating. They're scoring a ton of points. If you look at offensive rating, like I said, they're towards the top of the league. Opponent points, they're towards the top as well. Looks like they allow the 5th least amount of points, and then they score the 4th most. This is one of those teams that has a high floor and a high ceiling because their defense is there, their offense is definitely there. Even if they have a bad shooting game, they're going to keep the other team from scoring as well. And the number 1 is Auburn. The only reason I have Auburn is because it's Auburn. The only issue I have with Auburn so far is it feels like they're kind of playing with their food. Like as of late, they're kind of getting lazy, running through the motions. Only reason I say that is just because like they just beat Texas by just a few points. I need to pull up their official stats for Auburn. I've been recording for a long time. Holy crap. Janai Broom is giving you those. Janai Broom, Player of the Year type guy. Chad Baker Mazzara, Todd Pettiford, Denver Jones, Chaney Johnson, Miles Kelly, Dylan Cardwell, Ja'Kai Howard, JPPs, Jaheim Hudson. Which, I mean, I guess you're not really getting JP. Oh my gosh, I did not realize how bad he's been this year. I thought he was gonna be one of their better transfers. He's been terrible. Jaheim Hudson's been terrible too. I thought he'd be a better transfer as well. But you get that production made up for with Chaney Johnson. Miles Kelly's looked really good. Todd Pettiford's looked amazing. One of the best freshmen in the league so far. Super efficient. But, I mean, you look at their game against Texas, they were kind of playing with their food there. They beat Missouri by, a good margin. This team has potential. Their offense is so good. Their defense is so good. If I look at offensive rating, they are the number 1 offense. Defense, I guess their defense isn't as good as I thought. I feel like their defense is better, but their offense is just so good. It's so fluid. It's not like a team where they're throwing up shots. They're super efficient from 3, the second 3-point percentage, but they don't shoot. I guess they're 4th in the league in shooting threes, like amount. Threes attempted. Number 1 in field goal percentage, and they're only number 6 in field goals attempted. They're just a super efficient team. Bruce Pearl runs this like lineup where pretty much every player only plays about 20 minutes. Janai Broom is only averaging like I said, he's at like 19 points per game. But if you look at his minutes per game, where are the minutes at? Minutes played. I guess he's a little higher than normal. He's at 27, which I mean, he's earned those minutes. But there's just not much. This team is so deep. The way that Bruce Pearl runs the offense, like I was just mentioning, everyone plays about 20 minutes. Everyone's fresh. You never get a moment where it's like, oh, these guys are tired. Everyone's running. Everyone's hustling. It's Auburn. What else is there to say about this team? That is my power rankings. Let me know in the comments down below if you disagree with any of them. It's just a shame to see my Arkansas team down there so low. Texas, it's a shame to see them that low. Some surprises here, I guess. Not really many surprises. Florida's looked real. I mean, they might be a surprise. I thought they were going to be good, but I didn't think they were going to be this good. But yeah, I think if Florida continues to play this way, I could see them taking Auburn for that number 1 spot. It's just Auburn has looked insane, but so with Florida, I think they play. When do they play? Auburn. I bet my camera quality just got bad. My bad. Auburn versus Florida. When do they play? That's football. I want basketball. Sorry, I'm wasting time. They play February 8th, so still a while, but I cannot wait for that game. That's going to be a really good game. I expect Florida's ranking to jump up as well. Anyways, that's the episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.